Lobster, welcome to Buffing Bad Cards. I'm going to show you some cards that make you go, wait, this is in the game? And then I'll send you an updated version of that card. And after that, it's up to you if that card would still be unplayable or if it would break the game in unimaginable ways. Before we begin, what would you say are the cards and decks you're most known for?
Well, my favorite decks are definitely Puffcap decks. Teemo especially is my favorite champ and card in Runeterra alongside Puffcap Peddler. I just wish I could play them a bit more often. Braum, of course, my lookalike.
What I have in this video mostly is Puffcap cards. I have some Braum / Vladimir cards, and I have a few deep cards.
Yeah, it's a nice mixture. I like it.
All right, we're gonna start with some Puffcap support. So this is what it's like in the game right now, and I don't think I have ever seen this card played against me. And here is the updated version.
All right, let's have a look here. Plant a poison Puffcap on every card in the enemy deck. That is so much. That's like 30 Puffcaps on one strike in the early game. When I'm summoned, if you've added 2+ cards to your hand this round, grant me elusive. I would love if this was a card, but I think it's way too strong, to be honest, compared to cards like Puffcap Pup shuffles like 3 Puffcaps, to Teemo, who usually hits for 5, or even when he doubles Puffcaps, he maybe adds like another 15 or 20. Yeah, I would love the card to be like this. I just think it would be very strong, and it could also be played a lot outside of Puffcap decks even.
So my thought process going into this was it's a 4-mana 3/2. It needs to Nexus Strike, and you're probably going to play this with Bandle City Piltover. So besides stress defense, they don't really have a lot of good ways to keep their units alive and able to Nexus Strike. Plus, you need to actually do the work to get that elusive to make it a little more reliable. But if this was, for example, 5 mana or it only had 1 health, do you think it would be balanced?
You said yourself like you're pairing it with PNZ most likely, which means you can easily shoot your opponent's elusive blockers. So you're right, it's kind of hard to protect the unit. You have some inefficient stuff like, what's it called, a Purple Berry Shake, a Suit Up, and so on. You probably wouldn't build a full deck around it, but even in a lot of like just aggressive strategies, I feel like this could be very strong because the passive effect, right, the adding 2+ cards to hand in Bandle City is super easy, as we all know.
What if it was 3+? Would that be another way to balance it? Because I'm just looking for a way to make a card like this fair, because I think with a card like Ava, for example, it would be so cool if you hit the Nexus on turn 4, it'd be like, okay, now my opponent takes 1 damage every turn, basically, which is basically a ballistic bot. But then you pair it with Ava, maybe you get 2 hits in, and then it gets really spicy.
That's actually a really cool idea. Adding 2+ cards is much harder. You would either need to play a full-on draw card like Hidden Pathways the same turn, and that would already limit the potential of this card, right? That would mean it couldn't come down before turn 5, and you'd need to bank 3 spell mana.
This next card also has that theme of adding 2+ cards to your hand. For this one, I did make it 3+, but that'll explain itself when you read the text.
Okay, let's see. Another card that never saw play, right? You're the newbie. When I'm summoned around start, if you've added 3+ cards to your hand last round, add a Mushroom Cloud to your hand. Ooh, okay.
I did 3+ because if you're adding a Mushroom Cloud to your hand, it's always 2+, so it would activate itself. I feel like, yeah, that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, getting the cycle rolling is going to be a bit harder, because especially on these early turns, right? It's much harder to play this in the same round that you would generate or draw a bunch of cards with. Yeah, very interesting effect. This reminds me of the Nightfall elusive card that you suggested to Nickmake's plays, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's very similar, as in like changing an unplayable card into a potential back row engine. And imagine the synergy this would have with Puffcap Peddler. And also it's like interactable because it only has 2 HP. Might require some protection to keep it in the back row for a while. And that's a card I would definitely be playing around with in my decks.
Let's move on to the next card. And this is my favorite. Might not have seen this card before, Shards of the Mountain. And I commissioned some artwork for you. Let me know what you think of this one.
It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Oh my goodness, this is so well done. Really nice art. And I like although it is a Bandle City card, like the Targon vibes of the artwork. Holy smokes, where did you get that from?
I have an artist that makes my thumbnails, so I asked him, hey, can you make this for Lobster? Actually, hold on. He made something else. It was just a sketch. I told him I was gonna have you on this show, and then he quickly made this before I even said anything.
No. It's beautiful. I love it, man. Braum and the mushrooms, huh? Who would have thought that would ever be a pairing? I still need to gain like 20 kilograms until I look like this, though. I got it. Okay, Shrooms of the Mountain. 4 mana slow, fill your hand with mushroom clouds. I would love for something like this to be in the game, but I think it's gonna be one of those meme cards that doesn't really see play. Very similar to Shards of the Mountain in its effect and so on. I'm thinking if there's like some crazy synergy with spell activators here, right? With something like Puffcap Peddler, but something with a even bigger effect.
I mean, you have like those 2 cards I just showed in the game where you need to add cards to your hand, but that's probably about it. I can't think of any. Oh, maybe Mirror Mage? I mean, yeah, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right. That would work as a crazy type of finisher. Just like shuffling, what would it be, like 60 Puffcaps into your opponent's deck towards the end of the game. But it's also going to be at a very late stage of the game. So it's like a weird delayed finisher. It's like trying to murder someone with a spoon, right? By hitting them over and over again. Yeah, it's not going to be the strongest card, but I would love, and especially I would love for this artwork to be in the game. It's amazing.
It's my favorite part for sure. That's why I had to include it. It's mostly the artwork.
Yeah, good name as well. Shrooms of the Mountain.
I know, right? Okay, this is a card that recently got buffed. And I gave this a really small effect on the updated version here. But I think a card that does this first line attacks should be in the game to actually make the flash bombs playable.
So the only change is adding that when I'm summoned, create an advanced intel in hand. And yeah. I do think it is a very good change because cards that generate anything into the hand is already almost self-sufficient, especially in a region like PNZ that has so many discard synergies as well as so many spell synergies, right? Like and created card synergies like Augment and Victor and Neandroid and that kind of stuff. I absolutely agree with you that that is a pretty big change, and I would love this to be in a full-on trap deck because it also synergizes with cards like Puffcap Peddler as well as Hexcore Foundry and so on. I think that's actually a really good change. I think it would make it a staple card without making it broken. So one idea that did spring to my mind is not even playing this with Caitlyn, but with Teemo Ezreal and the Freeze deck that used to be popular.
Oh,
remember that
very
one?
Interesting. Yeah, I do.
And there it was like, you could definitely have Peddlers on the board because they still have 3 attack and you could always protect them with Brittle Steel, with Troll Chant, with Elixir of Iron. And with Justice Rider, it would be kind of the same idea that if you have a good protective combo tricks, you can use the stat line without worrying about losing your back row engine.
Really smart, actually. Yeah, this would be like a primary Troll Chant target to block with it and then protect it. Really smart. Right, the next card is also a Flash Bomb card, and here's the updated version. Also, 1 line of text added.
When your opponent activates a trap, reveal the card it was attached to. That is nice. I like the flavor. And I also like that it's kind of thematic with a card. Like Sting Officer, I think, is something like an undercover agent or spy.
Yeah, it feels like they're all like investigators, detectives trying to find C. It's the story of Caitlyn, like Karina. That's so I feel like it was a lot of people give me some mean comments about destroying the flavor of cards. I'd be like, what if I add some flavor instead?
Yeah, this one is on point, right? It does feel like infiltrating your opponent's deck and getting a bit of like information and so on. That is something that we also don't see a lot yet in Legends of Runeterra. Like last patch, what was it called? The Swindle, I think?
Oh yeah, Swindle, yeah.
It's another layer of the game that has a nice competitive element to it. I was gonna say like, ooh, what? Like when I saw Sting Officer, I already thought, what are you gonna do to this card? It's already almost playable. It's already kind of okay. Like if you add too much to it, it's gonna be broken. In the hands of the right player who can read this information correctly, it does have some good potential applications. I like it.
The final Puffcap trap cards. It's a big one.
Another custom-made Braum. Oh my goodness, the art on this is brilliant as well. Guerrilla Warfare, 12 mana slow, move all traps to the top card of the enemy deck. Oh, this is so hilarious. This is really funny. Because it allows for a lot of counterplay in its own way. Like this is, imagine you play this and your opponent is like, nah, time trick.
Yeah, exactly.
Just predict. And then it's like real Russian roulette, right? Because at some point you're gonna draw this one card that is an OTK. So we have basically an Exodia type of card that does require a lot of setup though, and that is highly interactable, right? So first of all, for a Puffcap deck, it is not easy to get to turn 9 with 3 banked spell mana, because they are inherently, like, they usually don't run healing, they're not that good against aggro. Then we have the evil purple region that can just say, no, I deny this card.
Yeah.
The evil yellow region, which can say, no, I will negate this card.
And they can predict.
So there's
goddamn yellow region.
And they can predict. Yeah. Oof. Imagine if this card ever becomes good, it forces the meta to run predict cards in random decks. Like everyone's gonna splash PNZ for time trade. That would be so hilarious.
Yeah, and then you turn it into Russian roulette. I love that. Technically, all you need to do is play some Puffcaps. Like you could play 4 Mushroom Clouds, shuffle 20 Shrooms into the deck, and then play this card. And technically, that's lethal.
What you could do is just play like Chump Wumps.
Yeah.
And the card is not that understated. I wonder if you only splash that and Guerrilla Warfare, if that is a bit too strong. Because you don't need any other Puffcap synergies in the rest of the deck.
Yeah, that's true.
Freljord can ramp and it can protect the You're the Newbie. Then you could build a ridiculous ramp Guerrilla Warfare deck. Imagine.
That'd be the way to do it.
That sounds really cool though. Like I would love to try this. I just think the deck could either be OP or toxic, like no pun intended, but like very frustrating to play against.
All right, that was the final bomb for the Puffcaps. Now we're gonna move on to some deep cards. Spoiler, I'm not gonna change this card to heal Nexus. I changed it entirely.
Isn't that what it already does anyway?
I've tried. Nope, I died anyway.
Sap Magic. Manifest a card you toss this game instead of healing your allies. This looks to be a bit more of a control-esque card. I don't think this would be playable at 3 mana though. The reason is you'd still mostly play this for the toss, right?
Yeah.
And there are cards that toss 3, like Drag Dredgers and Dead Bloom Wanderer, that is so much more mana efficient. Like you cannot ever play this in the early game. You could maybe play this as a 1-off or 2-off, as a very late control game if you're missing a combo. But Deep is not that dependent on specific combos, right? Like you cannot toss your champion, and any sea monster you usually have 2 or 3 copies of anyway. You'll draw eventually. Like maybe if you toss your 1-off Atrocity, this could sometimes be useful.
I was thinking about maybe this should be 2 mana when I made this, but then I realized, oh, it's still Maoka's champion spell. And then I wasn't so sure anymore. But if this was 2 mana, do you think it would be very playable? Just okay? Broken?
I was also going to suggest this to be at 2 mana. I think it would be okay. I would put it at 2.5 mana. Let's make it the first card in Legends of Runeterra that does not know how much it costs itself.
Yeah, like the Petricide Broadwing. That one should also be 2.5 mana.
Yeah, true.
The thing about this card that's funny is that you can technically go infinite if you play a Sap Magic and you already tossed one. But, you know, that's probably not very likely to happen. I have another card that will help you get deep, and it is a custom card.
Ooh, Isleback Turtle. Play toss 1 until you are deep. On turn 7. Okay, so this is basically a 7 mana 5/9.
Yeah.
Right? Unless the play effect gets denied or negated. Definitely, it's at least strong. I'm wondering if it's too strong.
My thought process with this one was that maybe you can slow down deep and use this as a way to play a slower deep deck and still get there effectively on turn 7.
Exactly. So I am wondering if people would just build deep decks without all of the deep package, without Drag Dredgers, without Sea Scarab. No, Sea Scarab is still good enough, but you mean cutting a lot of the toss cards?
Yeah, basically.
And then just playing very mana efficient cards, like all of the staple cards, all of the best cards from both regions. I'm just wondering if it would be too strong if like your whole deck is just Withering Wails, Make It Rains, maybe line them up and so on. You can play 3 copies of Viafe's Vengeance, some Ruinations, just like full on control pile, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you go deep, play Nautilus, and like within 1 turn, you have all of the sea monster army on your side. Could imagine that to be frustrating to play against.
Now that you mention it, this would probably make deep more boring to play. So on second thought, maybe maybe scrap this one if that's the case.
It's creative though, I'll give you that one.
When we talked earlier, you mentioned that deep has been a deck that you really like playing, but what is the satisfying thing about a deep deck to you?
I'll tell you the best feeling of deep is treasures. The other best feeling of deep is like the huge combo turns of like Nautilus after you played 1 or 2 Lure of the Depths and just playing 5 sea monsters on the very same turn. And the other thing would also be like those sweet atrocity finishes with a 13 attack Nautilus.
All right, I'm gonna disagree with that last one, but I'm very glad you said treasures. I reworked a card that is not at all a deep card into being something something treasury.
Mirai Songsters, when I'm summoned, create a legendary loot in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. And that is the first 13 mana card in the existence of Legends of Runeterra. Burst speed, create a treasure trove, plateworm egg, and keelbreaker in hand. If you are deep, they cost 0. If I'm tossed, draw me instead. In the current meta, the card would be fine because games don't go until turn 10 with 3 mana backed.
Yeah.
You just don't survive long enough against Bard or Kaisa or anything of the likes. You could not print that card and Isleback Turtle at the same time, that's for sure.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Would be a hilarious deck though, don't get me wrong.
I originally had this at slow, but I was playing a game at the same time and I had my Glorious Evolution denied. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this one burst and then just see how it does.
You can still deny the single treasures. I'm just wondering if the cost 0 part is too strong. Even if you just make it cost 1, it would mean that you would have to delay it into the next turn. Because right now this is like, if you have 13 mana, you kind of win the game right now.
That's really interesting that you say that because I fully agree with that. What if Legendary Loot was 12 mana and it said if you are deep, they cost 1. So the turn you play, you get to choose 1 treasure. And then if you make it to the next round, you get to play the others.
That's also a very nice idea. So like if you hit it on turn 9, you could not play any treasures. On turn 10, you could play 1 treasure with 3 spell mana banked. One more thing though that I will mention is that maybe the stat line is a bit too good. Maybe it should be like a 3-1 or a 2-2 because it is a potentially very powerful effect.
Agreed. Yeah, good call. That was the final deep card. We're gonna move over to one of your favorites. And this one is probably gonna be controversial.
Yeah.
So I made Braum more of a go tall rather than a go wide champion.
When I survive damage, summon a mighty power, or if you have one, give it +3/+3.
I think it's probably pretty broken at +3/+3.
Generally speaking, I do agree that Braum could receive a buff without him being broken or overpowered by any means. Like right now, you can really only play him with the hallowed keyword as well, right?
Yeah.
And even there, the deck isn't ridiculously strong by any means. This would be like a hilarious finisher in Vladimir Braum decks because you can swing in with just a 3/3 Poro, and especially if you have Skargrons online, you have the Vladimir passive, you just go for like a Death Lotus or 2. Maybe you even Blades Edge your own Braum. On the stack while resolving, that Poro is gonna grow to be like a 12/12.
Yeah.
Or with Skargrons, who knows, even like a 20 attack one-shot unit, right? Oh, there has to be some broken combo around this though, because there are so many cheap self-damaging cards, like Blood for Blood even, which you can do at burst speed. Your opponent can't even do anything against it.
Yeah. Blood for Blood transfusion, yeah.
Although I gotta admit, I forgot what Blood for Blood does. I think it doesn't hit champions, right?
Oh, you're right. I actually think you're right. Yeah, true.
Saved ourselves here before we get flamed in the YouTube comments. You could build a very cool deck around that. A very cool combo OTK-oriented deck.
I thought maybe +3/+3 goes a little too hard in the Vladimir decks that are already played that way. But at +2/+2, I think it's a lot less likely actually to get OTK.
Nonetheless, it is highly interactable, right? Your opponent can always either stun the Poro or Vengeance or disintegrate it.
All right, here's another self-damage card.
Okay, immediate Braum synergy. I'm curious. Crimson Aristocrat. Each round the first time I survive damage, draw 1. So without giving this tough, you can only really proc this effect once. Or if you're in Freljord and have protective combo tricks, of course, a few more times.
I was really scared of breaking this card if I didn't have each round the first time. At first, I was like, no, that would be too much. You would draw 5 cards a turn if you really wanted to.
But it does solve a pretty big problem of Skarground stacks, and that is that they do often run out of steam, and they do not really want to play something like Whispered Words because it's just too slow, too expensive, costs too much mana. And I mean, the only real card generator in that deck is the biggie boy. I forgot his real name. Crimson something.
The curator. Yeah.
The curator, exactly. Edwin, yeah. Edwin and his gang. But he only summons people from his gang. And as of right now, most of them are not that strong. Crimson Disciple, you're sometimes happy with. What was her name? Supper, right?
Yeah. You must be Supper, exactly.
Yeah, this would also be a very significant buff to Crimson Curator. Because all of a sudden, you can get more aristocrats, which means more main deck draw. So that's what I'm worrying about a little bit, is if you main deck 3 of these and generate 1 or 2 off of curators, if it doesn't give too much value to the deck at too little of a tempo cost.
That's fair. That's a lot of value with those 2 cards for sure. They generate and draw a lot.
Considering how Skargrons is currently positioned, I think it would be perfectly fine.
I made a unique word that I don't think has been in Runeterra before. But when you see steel, just imagine that it also pings for 1.
So this is kind of like Drain, but you can get maximum HP, right? Additionally.
Exactly. So if this steals 1, this will become a 1/3.
Very, very situational card with a potential huge payoff. You'd want to play this as a control card, right?
Yeah, you could, but you can use this on your own units and on the enemy units.
Even in a tempo deck, using this on your own unit, like murdering your own unit, you would basically just buff it by 1 and 2. Like you'd only add the base stat line of the Troll Scavenger. I think that would only really be good on your own unit if the Scavenger also had some keyword that benefits from a big stat line. Like say, for this card to be playable in a tempo deck, this would probably have to have something like Overwhelm.
Yeah, I don't know if you've played Trundle in League of Legends. This is kind of what trolls do, right? They steal your health.
True.
So, yeah.
What was it? Subjugate or something?
Right, yeah. His ultimate steals like the resistances and gives it to himself.
It's thematic for sure. Sunny's on fire today.
All right, the final card. Speaking of giving a keyword to something like this, here's the updated version.
Okay. Scarthane Steven. I love it. Deal 1 to an ally and grant it +3/+0. If you have another damaged ally, grant it Overwhelm. Just looking at stats, it's 3 mana, 5/3, because it takes 1 health, gives the attack.
From my experience, it's less likely that you think to have a damaged ally, especially if you know you're playing against cards like this. Unless you're doing it yourself, which, I mean, again, you don't just do that unless you're getting value.
And I do agree with that, absolutely. I think in like your average deck that contains Freyr, the card, it would not be that consistent. The potential use in specifically a Scarground's deck would probably be too high. Like the ceiling of the card would probably be too high, even though like in the average deck it's not that special. Because all of a sudden, if you have a deck where pinging is not even a downside, but rather a benefit, because like you could also trigger a card draw, you could trigger Scarmother Vrina, you could trigger something else, right? They have tough, they don't lose HP, they do get 3 or 4 attack plus the Overwhelm tag. There I do think it's too strong and it would probably need to be a bit higher costed. Maybe like 4 mana? Another idea would be give it Overwhelm this round.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. That's a good call too.
So that way it would still be a nice combo tool, a late game finisher, but it would not be that much of a brute force if you play it in the early game. It already has good stats and then like the value continues to drag out throughout the whole game, right?
From all the cards that you see here, do you have a favorite?
Do you already know what my favorite is?
Yeah,
I'm just asking out of curiosity.
I think I have a feeling it might be the one with Timo in the artwork.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2.
Okay.
Either Shrooms of the Mountain or Guerrilla Warfare.
Okay.
But as cool as Shrooms of the Mountain looks and as funny as it is flavor-wise, I don't think it would really see play, whereas a card like Guerrilla Warfare would definitely like potentially break the game. Potentially, you could at least build some really fun decks with it that can actually win if you get their game plan through. And that's why I would definitely go with Guerrilla Warfare. Like it adds another layer to the game, a different type of ending games. And one that you can interact with at that, right? I like it. It's very creative.
For me personally, Guerrilla Warfare is my favorite too. I can also just imagine playing a flash bomb decks and doing this to just nuke the enemy board instead of winning the game, just as like a statement.
You could still do that while setting up a lethal attack, right?
True.
Like you do that in your opponent's turn, and all of a sudden at the start of your attack turn, your opponent's board gets cleared or you swing in.
Yeah.
Or you just have one Caitlyn on the board. You only put flash bomb traps in, and all of a sudden she snipes the Nexus for like 64 or something.
That's hilarious. I love that.
It would for sure make for some good highlight clips.